In their previous life, Emily and her cousin, Chloe, had gotten married on the very same day. Chloe, a gentle and traditional woman, had wed Commander James Lee of the Navy, a man known for his cold and distant nature. Chloe's heart had been broken just because James missed their anniversary to celebrate his childhood friend's birthday. While she only wanted an explanation, James had calmly declared he had nothing to be ashamed of, leading to a 5-year silent Cold War between the two. Emily, however, had a fiery temper and preferred action over words. She had married Liam Thompson, an accountant in a factory complex. A mild-mannered man, he had criticized her constantly for speaking too loudly and dressing sloppily, leading to daily petty arguments and major fights. Eventually, he had stopped coming home, and her marriage had ended in less than a year. Suddenly, Emily opened her eyes and found herself back on the day of their shared wedding.
Welcome to Tiny Storytime YT. Reborn on her wedding day, Emily swaps husbands and takes control of her destiny. Let's dive into her epic comeback.
"Get off the train, you worthless child," her mother screamed, running alongside. "You refuse to marry a decent accountant to become a daughter-in-law on some god-forsaken island nobody knows about? How could I have given birth to such a liability?" Inside the train, Emily watched her mother chase and curse, feeling a sudden pang of sadness. But as she thought about their past fates, she reassured herself that this was the right decision. Although the deserted island was remote and James wasn't easy to live with, it didn't matter. If they got along, they would live together. If not, they would part ways. As a woman, it wasn't as if she couldn't survive without a man. But Chloe was different. After marrying James, Chloe had lived her entire life in misunderstanding because of a third party's interference. Gentle as she was, Chloe had been worn down by time and sorrow. Therefore, seeing her cousin frowning with anxiety this time, Emily didn't hesitate and started packing. "Chloe, let me marry James Lee, and you can marry Liam Thompson," Emily suggested. "Liam may seem useless, but he has a pleasant disposition that suits you." Chloe had jumped up in delight but then firmly bit her lip. "Emily, James is difficult to live with, and then there's that other woman. I can't let you bear my misfortunes." Emily had smiled. A childhood betrothal was made, so it doesn't matter who goes. Grandpa didn't specify which granddaughter. Besides, James Lee may not be easy, but I'm not easy to bully either. If I can't stand him, I'll fight back. I want to live happily, not just endure. With that, she demonstrated a complex martial arts move on the spot, making her cousin, who was still sad, burst out laughing. Since she was young, Emily had trained in martial arts and preferred action over words. Her past husband, Liam, had always acted like a pseudo-scholar and had criticized her for being rude. She hated his lecturing, and he had complained that she didn't have a single feminine trait, resulting in a marriage that was no better than Chloe's, ending in less than a year. This time, she had determined to let Chloe marry Liam, because even if they didn't get along, Chloe would at least be close to home with family nearby, which was better than leaving her lonely on that remote island without anyone knowing, eventually falling ill from grief. Thinking of that, Emily held Chloe's hand and coaxed her until she finally nodded and agreed to the switch. Grabbed her luggage and boarded the train alone for the remote island, leaving a clear and concise letter. Yet, her mother had still chased after her. Emily shouted back to her mother, running behind the train, "Mom, I'm just getting married. If it doesn't work out, I'll come home myself. Don't worry." The journey had been 3 days and 2 nights, eating and sleeping before reaching the coastal city. She quickly boarded another boat for the island, hoping to sleep peacefully. But she had been struck by severe seasickness. By the time she stepped off the boat, her face was deathly pale, and she carried an indescribable scent. Sitting in the military guardhouse, waiting for James Lee to pick her up, Emily secretly sighed in relief. It was a good thing she had come in her cousin's place. If Chloe had to endure this hardship, she would probably be in tears. "James, there's a strange smell in here. I feel so uncomfortable," a sickly sweet voice rang out, pulling Emily from her thoughts. Looking up, she saw a frail-looking girl with twin braids, covering her nose and whining to the man beside her. The tall man standing perfectly straight with a serious expression was none other than James. Emily immediately rolled her eyes. "Are you James Lee? I'm your fiancée, Emily. Here's the marriage document. Check it. If everything is correct, hurry up and take me inside to rest." With that, she threw her suitcase at him. Not bothering to pay attention to the other girl's aggrieved expression, Emily stood up and walked straight ahead. "James, it seems like my future sister-in-law doesn't like me," the weak voice of the girl named Haley echoed behind her. This made Emily, who was already exhausted and dizzy, lose her temper. "Like you or not, do I even know you?" She glared at James. "Are you even a man? Why are you moving so slowly?" Saying that, she didn't bother looking at them anymore and stormed off with a scowl. After taking just a few steps, she heard footsteps following her. Glancing back, it was indeed James. He silently carried her suitcase and followed, his face completely expressionless, not even bothering to explain what had just happened. No wonder her cousin had suffered so much in her past life. One was a manipulative, two-faced girl, and the other was a rigid block of ice. Meanwhile, Chloe had been too noble and proud, so naturally, she had been taken advantage of. But Emily was different. She was not the meek type who would easily swallow her anger. If they could live together, fine. If not, she would make sure neither of them had a day of peace. Because it was a childhood betrothal, James had already received notice from their hometown and had submitted their marriage registration early on. Just a few days later, their wedding was held right on the military base, with the help of the other soldiers' wives. James's parents had passed away early, and Emily's family lived far away, so all the guests were military personnel. The wedding atmosphere was joyful and lively when a voice suddenly interrupted. "I'm so envious. Emily had a childhood betrothal, which is why she gets to marry James. She has such good luck, unlike me." Saying that, Haley lowered her head and wept silently. The entire wedding courtyard instantly fell dead silent, with only the sound of her sniffling. Everyone looked at each other in bewilderment. Then, Emily glanced at Haley's trembling back, let out a scoff, and took a few steps forward. She stood on her tiptoes, wrapped her arms around James's head, and planted a loud kiss on his cheek. Afterward, she turned to Haley, raising an eyebrow triumphantly. "That's exactly right. I do have good luck. James has a great career, good looks, and a great physique. Who wouldn't want him? But only someone with strong luck like me can handle it. Those with fragile fates don't have the blessing for this." Finishing her words, she tightened her grip around James's waist, giving him a painful pinch while flashing him a bright, beaming smile. "Tell me, am I right, James?" Although James's face didn't show any clear emotion, the tips of his ears turned unusually red. "Right," he replied. Before he could say anything else, Haley was already looking at him with tears welling up in her eyes, her voice choked with emotion. "James, please don't misunderstand, neither of you. I genuinely came to give you two my blessings. If my future sister-in-law doesn't like me, then I won't attend today's wedding." As she spoke, 2 streams of tears rolled down her porcelain-white face. "James, remember to come pick me up tomorrow," she added. "For all these years, we've always been together on this day." James nodded. "Yeah, I'll prepare a gift and come get you tomorrow. Don't worry." Upon hearing those words, the hand Emily had wrapped around his waist immediately shifted its grip. She executed a perfect shoulder throw right in the middle of the wedding. The entire courtyard fell deathly silent again. All the guests' eyes widened in disbelief at what had just happened. "Are you kidding me? Trying to assert dominance and play mind games right in the middle of her wedding? And what on earth was that about an anniversary?" In their past life, those two really did go out to celebrate that anniversary. But when he returned, he hadn't even bothered to say a single word to Chloe. That was exactly why they had lived in a cold war for the rest of their lives. But Emily wasn't her cousin. Chloe might have been able to endure it, but Emily certainly wouldn't. If he dared to go on an anniversary date with someone else, she would drag him back by his hair, beat him up, pack her bags, and go straight home. Did this desolate island really think the women of her family were desperate and afraid of becoming spinsters? If it weren't for the promises made of those old folks, she would be living a carefree life right now. James, are you hurt?" Haley cried, her face flushed red with anger. "Sister-in-law, how could you do that? He is a man, and yet you." She looked at James with eyes full of heartache. However, James didn't react much. He quickly stood up, shot Emily an unreadable look, then brought a hand to his mouth and coughed lightly. "I'm fine." Then, as if nothing had happened, he grabbed Emily's hand. "You can come with me tomorrow." Emily froze, staring at him. Haley, on the other hand, turned pale, looking as if she couldn't believe her ears. "James, how could you treat me like this? I don't want to see you ever again." Saying that, she covered her face, burst into tears, and ran off. Right after, a deep, warm voice whispered in Emily's ear. "Let's just get through the wedding first. I'll explain everything to you tonight. Be good." With no one else interfering, Emily felt less distracted. Seeing this, the guests didn't dare cause any further commotion, and the rest of the wedding proceeded smoothly. Before long, Emily was sitting in the bridal chamber, slapping the bed in frustration. "James Lee, what on earth are you trying to pull? Were you trying to use a honey trap on me just now? Don't think that kind of trick works on me." The door suddenly clicked open, and James walked in. Emily let out a cold scoff. "Let me tell you, I absolutely despise wishy-washy men. If you're with one girl today and another tomorrow, we might as well get a divorce right now so I can go back to my hometown and marry someone else. James furrowed his brows. This betrothal was arranged by my grandfather. Since I've married you, I will take full responsibility to the very end. Hearing that, Emily immediately spat out a scoff. James Lee, what era do you think we're living in with that outdated mindset? Let me make this clear. If we get along, we stay together. If we don't, we split. When your grandfather arranged this marriage while I was still in the womb, did he say that once we're married, we can never divorce for the rest of our lives? James seemed driven crazy by her provocation. He paced back and forth across the room, then sighed, sat down on the edge of the bed, and gently tried to hold her hand. Emily, Haley and I had nothing going on in the past, and we certainly won't in the future. I genuinely want to build a life with you. I'm not good with words, but if there's anything you're unhappy with, just tell me straight, and I will fix it. In the dim glow of the bridal chamber, his face looked full of absolute sincerity. Emily suddenly felt her cheeks burn. She nodded, feigning nonchalance. All right, my temper isn't exactly pleasant either. If you can handle it, then we'll make it work. Seeing the teasing glint in his eyes, Emily felt a sudden flash of annoyance. She immediately lunged forward, threw her arms around his neck, and kissed him. The atmosphere quickly grew heated. True to his reputation as a Special Forces soldier, James instantly seized the initiative. His hands moved toward the buttons of her shirt, and he looked at her intently, his voice hoarse. May I, my wife? Embarrassed, Emily gave him a hard pinch. Are you really asking at a time like this? James let out a soft chuckle and buried his face in her neck. My mistake. Feeling his warm breath against her nape, Emily slowly closed her eyes. James, this is bad. Haley left a letter and disappeared. Bang, bang, bang. A barrage of urgent knocks pounded on the door. James instantly sprang to his feet. Go to sleep first. I need to step out for a bit. Emily's face turned purple with rage. There are so many soldiers out there. Why does it have to be you? Do you have any idea that tonight is our wedding night? James got dressed neatly, walked over to her, and grabbed an extra coat, holding it out to her. Come with me, honey. Haley's family once saved my life. She is their only daughter. I can't just ignore this. Can you come with me? When we get back, you can hit me or scold me all you want. James pleaded. Emily paused for a moment, then brushed his hand away. She put on her coat herself. Fine, let's go. Without bothering to look at him, she walked coldly out of the room. She had only taken a few steps outside when she felt her hand tightly grasped. She tried to shake it off a couple of times but couldn't, so she turned and glared at him. Walk slowly. It's very dark out, James said. Acting as if he didn't see her fiery, angry gaze, he simply held her hand tightly as they walked. Soon they arrived at Haley's house. Because her parents had passed away early, the military had taken good care of her, providing her with a large house. At this moment, the entire yard was packed with people. Mrs. Davis, the woman who had first discovered Haley was missing, ran over frantically and handed them a letter. James, I don't want to be a burden to everyone anymore. I'm gonna find my parents. Looking at the brief message on the paper, James furrowed his brows. He immediately ordered everyone to spread out and search. The whole island suddenly echoed with calls of, Haley, Haley. The coastal area had the most people searching. Afraid that something bad might actually happen, Emily also joined the search. Since there were too many people there, she decided to look in the more hidden, secluded corners. Who would have thought she would stumble upon a surprise? It's you? Where is James? Hearing footsteps, Haley had turned around joyfully, but the moment she saw it was Emily, her face immediately fell. Seeing her standing on the rocky cliff with eyes full of resentment, Emily let out a scoff of contempt. What? Is a man who doesn't even have you in his heart really worth risking your life for? Haley's face flushed red, then turned pale. She gritted her teeth and replied, What do you know? James and I grew up together. My family even saved his life. If you hadn't barged in, he would be my husband by now. Emily chuckled coldly. Huh. If he truly loved you, would I have even gotten the chance to step in? Besides, he and I were betrothed before we were even born. Speaking of coming first or last, it was never your turn. You never had a part in this before, and you certainly won't in the future. She narrowed her eyes and growled. James Lee is my man. But if that man dares to have any other thoughts, I wouldn't mind breaking his legs and tossing him back to you, so you two can be lovebirds in the wilderness. But do you really have what it takes to keep him? Having said her piece, Emily turned around, intending to leave. Since she had found the person and it was obvious Haley had no intention of dying, it was just the usual crying and throwing a tantrum typical of little girls. Emily didn't even want to bother arguing, but unexpectedly Haley suddenly grabbed Emily's hand. She leaned in close to her ear and whispered, "If we both fall into the sea, who do you think James will save first?" Before Emily could react, Haley forcefully dragged her down into the water. Caught off guard, Emily swallowed several mouthfuls of salty seawater. "Help, James, help me!" Haley screamed. Amidst the swirling water, Emily saw James rushing over, his face etched with worry. Meanwhile, Haley put on a look of sheer panic, acting her part to perfection. Emily laughed coldly inwardly. This kind of man who attracted so many buzzing bees and butterflies was truly a nuisance. Instantly, Emily turned her head and swam toward her. Make him choose between the two of them? She was not the type to sit around waiting for a man to save her. Not only did she not need anyone to save her, but she also wouldn't let anyone save Haley either. Probably not expecting Emily to know how to swim, Haley gaped in sheer terror. When Emily grabbed her hand, Haley started thrashing and screaming, "James, save me, save me." Watching her struggle like a slaughtered pig, Emily felt both amused and irritated. Seeing James about to jump in, Emily immediately struck, delivering a swift chop to the back of Haley's neck, that knocking her out cold. Then, without any hesitation, she dragged her straight back to the shore. Fortunately, they hadn't fallen far from the shoreline. It only took a few strokes to get back. Just as James was about to approach and help, Emily instantly yelled, "Stay away. If you touch her even a little bit today, you might as well go to her house and propose tomorrow." Panting heavily, Emily collapsed onto the ground, watching the crowd swarm around Haley. James's face darkened, but he remained silent, simply taking off his coat and draping it over Emily's shoulders. "Honey, let's go home," he said. Upon hearing that, Haley, who was lying on the ground receiving first aid from a nurse, suddenly sat bolt upright and screamed, "James, you can't leave." Under the suspicious gazes of everyone present, she whimpered, her eyes brimming with tears. "James, it was Emily who pushed me into the sea. Are you going to defend a murderer?" Her words sent the entire courtyard into an uproar. One of the soldiers' wives flared up, pointing her finger right at Emily's face and scolding her harshly. "Oh my God. I thought you were just strong-willed. Who knew you could be so vicious? That girl didn't do anything to you. How could you be so cruel?" "That's right. These girls from the outside really don't know their place," another added. The reprimands poured down on her relentlessly. Emily clenched her fists, glaring at the crowd around her, and caught the flash of smugness in Haley's eyes. She was so infuriated that she could barely control herself, wanting nothing more than to lunge forward and slap the girl a few times. But James suddenly held her back firmly. Looking at his cold, unreadable face, her blood boiled even more. She thought he didn't believe her either. If that were the case, what was she even doing on this deserted island? She couldn't eat well, she couldn't sleep well, and now she was being framed. Sure enough, in the end, he still chose to believe his childhood friend. Fine. Just wait until she beat Haley up, then she would go back, write up the divorce papers, and leave. She didn't want this anymore. "Emily is not that kind of person. I believe her," James suddenly spoke up in a deep, steady voice. "Furthermore, Haley, did you forget that you were the swimming champion last year?" Those words drained all the color from Haley's face. "That's right, she knows how to swim, so why did she need someone to save her?" The crowd's gazes immediately shifted to suspicion. Haley panicked, tears streaming down her face again. I fell into the water so suddenly that I panicked, and my leg cramped. If Emily hadn't pulled me, I wouldn't have been so scared." Hearing her still trying to shift the blame, Emily couldn't hold back anymore. She threw off James's hand, lunged forward, and delivered 2 resounding slaps. Haley's face swelled up right in front of everyone. "How dare you hit me? On what grounds?" Haley shrieked, charging forward to claw at Emily. But Emily was quicker, delivering a swift kick that sent her sprawling flat on her back. Emily dusted off her hands, looking down at the girl sitting on the ground clutching her face, and let out a cold chuckle. "I hit you. So what? Do I need to pick an auspicious time to do it? James, you promised my parents you would take care of me, and now you're letting your wife bully me like this? If everyone hadn't arrived in time today, I would have died." Haley cried until her eyes were bloodshot, looking at James with immense grievance. The crowd began to turn back toward Emily with unfriendly stares. "That does make sense," someone muttered. James stared at Haley for a moment, then nodded. Emily sneered inwardly, cursing herself for being blind enough to marry this kind of man. Fine, she would play this game to the bitter end today. But unexpectedly, James gripped Emily's hand tightly, so tightly that she couldn't break free. "Then let the investigators clear this up. Based on the traces at the scene, they can determine exactly what happened. If Emily really did it, I will not cover for her. But if my wife is being framed, I will not let this slide either." His words made the crowd nod in agreement. Someone even went straight to call the investigators over. Haley sat trapped in the middle, her face turning pale green. Seeing her drenched in cold water, the soldiers' wives took off their coats and wrapped them around her. Emily sat there with her head bowed in silence, secretly hoping they would hurry up and conclude she was the culprit, so she could get a divorce and go home to eat her mother's braised pork. Whoever liked this god-forsaken place could stay. Whoever wanted this husband who attracted so much drama could have him. Honey, I believe you. Just endure it a little longer. Once your name is cleared, we'll go home and you can hit me or scold me all you want. His voice whispered in her ear, making her freeze. Emily looked up and saw that James's eyes were full of guilt, his gaze unusually soft. Eventually, the investigators arrived. However, things didn't go according to the script Emily had hoped for. It wasn't a case of families covering up for each other. After examining the scene, the investigators concluded that Haley had jumped in herself. The entire yard fell into an awkward silence, and many of the military wives rushed over to apologize to Emily. Some well-meaning people even advised her just be understanding with the girl. She's been an orphan since childhood. It's quite pitiful. If you pity her, then who will pity my wife? James asked. A girl who traveled all the way to a strange place like this island, with no relatives, only to be falsely accused. Who is she supposed to cry to? He turned to Haley, his gaze stern. Listen closely. Your life is your own. Your parents were heroes, so their child must also live respectably. From now on, I will no longer get involved in your affairs. Look after yourself. Having said that, ignoring the stares of the crowd and Haley's furious screams behind them, James grabbed Emily's hand and walked away. Back home, he carefully brought a steaming bowl of ginger soup and gently sat down next to her. Honey, that year when we were on a mission, it was Mr. B. Davis who sacrificed himself to cover the team's retreat. He passed away, leaving only Haley behind. So all these years, out of respect for the dead, I have always been tolerant of her. But I never expected that very indulgence would make her turn out like this. He sighed, his voice deep and quiet. At that moment, Emily saw that he seemed to be deep in thought about something. Emily tilted her head and shot him a sideways glance. What are you sighing about? Let me tell you this. From now on, I don't care if it's Haley or whoever else, whether she saved your life or whether she's mad at you, as long as you involve yourself with another woman, I won't hesitate to break all 3 of your legs, pack them up, and send them straight to her. Hearing that, James burst out laughing and grabbed her raised fist. All right, whatever my wife says is right, but the spring night is short. Let's not talk about those things anymore. Let's go to sleep early. With that, he set the empty bowl in her hands down. His other hand slipped behind her back, pulling her waist tightly against him. Under the warm, yellow light, her consciousness gradually blurred, sinking into a space of sweet intoxication. From then on, Haley no longer appeared in front of her. Instead, the neighboring military wives would occasionally bring over homegrown vegetables, or invite her to the beach to catch seafood when the tide went out. Life slowly passed by like that, and Emily gradually fell in love with the peacefulness of the island. Her relationship with James grew increasingly close and warm. Everything seemed to be going perfectly, yet she felt a lingering sense of unease, as if something was about to happen. And then, that day came. She was happily carrying a bag full of fresh oysters back home. Just as she stepped through the gate, she saw James pacing back and forth restlessly, a tense look on his face, holding a piece of paper in his hand. The moment he saw her, he rushed over, grabbed her hand, and pulled her inside. Wow, getting this impatient after being away from your wife for just a little bit? Or is your wife just too blessed? Emily joked lightly as she walked past a few military wives who were teasing them. But as soon as they entered the house, James shoved the paper in front of her face. Honey, we got married but forgot to inform your family. This is a letter from your parents. Hearing that, her hands trembled, dropping the bag of oysters onto the ground without even bothering to pick it up. She knew that this situation was going to be even more tragic than the oysters on the floor. She opened the letter. Just as expected, Chloe's soft handwriting couldn't mask the murderous aura radiating from her mother. Secretly swapping marriages with her cousin, strike 1. Running away to get married without permission, strike 2. Getting married and forgetting about her family entirely without a single word of greeting, strikes piled upon strikes, a heavy, unforgivable crime. Emily glanced over at James. His face wasn't looking any brighter than hers. No, whatever. If the sky falls, let the men hold it up. All she knew was that she was living a very happy life right now. At the end of the letter, Chloe had also written, after marrying Liam, Chloe's life was going very well. Furthermore, she was pregnant, which meant Emily was going to be an aunt. Thinking back to their past lives, Chloe had spent her entire life with James without having any children, while Emily had divorced early, thrown herself into the business world, and ultimately grown old and lonely. Yes, now they had finally taken a different, much better path. James hugged her from behind and whispered, "Honey, Chloe is having a baby. So when are we going to have our own little one?" Emily tried to ignore the warmth against her ear and tilted her chin up. "That depends on you, doesn't it? If you were capable, I would have been pregnant ages ago." Hearing this, not only was he not angry, but he also glanced at the bag of oysters on the floor. He chuckled softly, his voice dropping an octave. "All right then. Tonight I will nourish myself properly so you can quickly catch up with their progress." What happened that night was not exactly appropriate to recount. All she knew was that from then on, every time she went out to the beach to catch seafood, she never dared to bring oysters home again. Even if she caught them, she gave them all away to the other military wives. One day, after a bit of laughing and joking, Mrs. Reed suddenly changed her tone. "Hey, guess who I saw yesterday?" Everyone looked at each other in curiosity before Mrs. Reed smiled smugly. "Yesterday, I went out to look for my son and happened to see Haley walking hand in hand with Richard in the woods." Mrs. Clark immediately shook her head. "No way. Richard already has a wife and kids. No matter how unruly Haley is, she wouldn't go as far as getting entangled with a married man. Besides, that man is old enough to be her father." Mrs. Reed, annoyed, slapped her hand against her thigh. "I'm telling the truth. If you don't believe me, just wait and see. Judging by how those two looked yesterday, I'm guessing it won't be long now." The island was small, let alone the military base, which was even more tightly knit. Perhaps they didn't even bother to hide it, so the rumors quickly spread everywhere. Emily and James naturally didn't care about the gossip. He was busy with his training, and she didn't want to stay at home all the time. After discussing it with him, she requested to cooperate with the military unit to start building a food processing factory. The goal was to utilize the island's coconuts and seafood, simultaneously increasing the base's income and providing more jobs for the locals. But no beginning was ever easy. A sudden storm struck, nearly washing away all her hard work. Emily stood in the middle of the ruined construction site, rolling up her sleeves to clean up alongside the workers. Having spent years in the business world in her past life, there was nothing she hadn't seen. A single failure could never bring her down. Suddenly, a shrill voice sounded from behind her. "Oh my, if it isn't Emily? What happened? Did your entire business and hard work collapse?" Turning around, it was exactly who she expected. Haley. Completely different from her previously demure appearance, this time she wore a trendy dress and shiny leather shoes on her feet, and her wrists and fingers were adorned with a watch and rings. But good Lord, the storm had just passed, and the island was still a muddy mess. Dressing like that must have been quite a struggle for her. Seeing Emily staring, Haley grew even more smug. "Do you know what it means to live a life of luxury? Before, I was foolish enough to think James was a solid pillar to lean on. Now I understand. A man must have power and money. Only then can a woman live comfortably." Saying that, she spun around to show off her dress. "Otherwise, you'll end up like you, getting married only to toil away from dawn till dusk, not enjoying a single bit of blessing." Emily laughed coldly. Without saying much, she shoved Haley hard, sending her tumbling to the ground. "What? Were those 2 slaps from last time not enough to make you remember? Or do I need to use my fists?" Emily leaned down, staring straight into her eyes. "You leeching off men is your own business, but don't come parading it in front of my face. They say women hold up half the sky, but you are just a shameless parasite feeding off others. If I had done the disgraceful things you've done, I would hide in my house and never dare to show my face. And you, with skin as thick as yours, the next time a storm hits, just use your face to block the wind. It would do a great job." Hearing Emily's scolding, Haley's face turned red, then green. Trembling with anger, she stammered, "You! How dare you bully me? Let me tell you, my Richard won't let this slide. Don't even dream of building this broken-down factory. As for James Lee, he better pack his bags and get out of here." Emily burst out laughing. "Oh, I'd love to see exactly how you plan to destroy this factory." She was just about to roll up her sleeves and give her 2 more slaps when a cold, deep voice rang out from behind. "Stop right there." Emily turned around to see Commander Lewis. At this moment, he was staring coldly at Haley, who was on the ground, and spoke in a stern voice. "The construction of the factory on this island is for the military and the surrounding villagers. What right do you have to stop it? Furthermore, what exactly is your relationship with Richard?" Emily turned to look. Beside him stood James and Richard. Being called out, Richard immediately washed his hands of the matter. Reporting to the commander, I have no relationship with her whatsoever. I have no idea why she is using my name to cause trouble. Hearing his ruthless denial, Haley's face turned pale and she trembled with rage. You, Richard? Do you have no conscience? I am already your woman. How dare you say we have nothing to do with each other? Richard broke into a cold sweat, his face filled with panic. He pulled her to the side, leaned in close, and whispered threateningly. Listen here, girl. You can eat whatever you want, but watch what you say. Don't drag me down just because you want to help James. I have a wife and kids. If you and I get entangled, how will you ever have the face to live in this world? Hearing this, Haley blinked, then turned to look at the commander and James, with tears welling up in her eyes. James, I'm sorry. I did all this just because I was jealous. I was jealous that Emily got to marry you. Just now, it was because she pushed me to the ground that I said those nasty things. But you know that the person I've always liked is you. Please don't be mad at me, okay? She lowered her head and covered her face with her hands, looking incredibly aggrieved. People began to whisper, casting critical glances at James. Even the commander quietly shifted his gaze back and forth between the two of them. Seeing the situation turn in his favor, Richard happily moved to help Haley up. But, whether by accident or on purpose, she suddenly tumbled to the ground again, her back hitting squarely against a rock. Ah! She groaned in pain, her face turning deathly pale. Nearby, a military wife screamed, Look, there's blood. Everyone simultaneously directed their gaze toward her. The bottom of Haley's dress was already stained red. Oh my God, she's having a miscarriage, someone whispered in a low voice. The single sentence rang out in the silence, reaching everyone's ears. In a panic, Haley grabbed Richard's sleeve, sobbing uncontrollably. Richard, save our baby, save me! Richard's face darkened completely. At this point, anything he said would be useless. His relationship with Haley was glaringly obvious. What are you still standing there for? Hurry up and get her to the clinic, the commander roared. Gritting his teeth, Richard picked up the wailing Haley and ran off. Later, Emily heard that the baby couldn't be saved. Haley threw a massive fit at the clinic. As for Richard, who was supposed to be disciplined for the scandal, unexpectedly managed to escape punishment because he had never officially registered his marriage with his wife back in their hometown. Thus, the two exploited the loophole and became the married couple with the biggest age gap on the island. Although the law couldn't touch them, Richard was still transferred to a different post, lost all chances of promotion, and was almost certain to be discharged from the military in a few years. As for his former wife in his hometown, although they had no marriage certificate, she already had 3 children with him. Upon hearing the news that their father had married a new wife, the kids dropped out of school, packed their bags, and traveled to the military base to find him. From then on, Richard's household was in total chaos. The family's internal strife became endless gossip that the women in the neighborhood never stopped talking about. However, none of that had anything to do with Emily anymore. Now, her factory was fully built and operating steadily. She and James finally had the time to return to their hometown to apologize for their actions. The trip back to their hometown went smoother than expected. Emily slept comfortably the entire way. Yet, upon arriving at her front door, she stood hesitantly for a long time, not daring to step inside. James smiled and held her hand. Don't worry. Later, no matter if they hit or scold, I will take the blows for you. But aren't your legs getting tired from standing here trembling for so long? Emily took a few deep breaths and finally stepped through the door. Just as she was about to smile and say hello, a loud shout echoed from inside the house. Kneel. Emily rolled her eyes and sighed. See, I knew it. She was just about to bend down, but James was faster. He dropped straight to his knees on the floor, looking at her parents and grandfather with a face full of sincerity. The fault is mine. I should have come back sooner to apologize. Whatever the punishment is today, I will gladly accept it all. I just ask that you do not blame Emily. She is physically weak, so I will bear her share of the punishment as well. With that, not waiting for anyone to speak, he bowed his head to the floor 3 times, the heavy thud, 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 echoing clearly in the room. However, her grandfather's face remained stone cold, showing no reaction. Her mother, on the other hand, was smiling so widely that her face wrinkled up like a tangerine. If her grandfather hadn't been sitting right there, she probably would have run over to help her beloved son-in-law up. Emily quickly chimed in. Grandpa, don't be mad anymore. Your precious granddaughter is here now. Please forgive us. Besides, look, both of us sisters are living happily now, aren't we? Not waiting for her grandfather to reply, she rushed over to take the baby from her cousin's arms. Unexpectedly, she used a bit too much force, causing Chloe to stumble and nearly fall. Before Emily could even reach out to catch her, her brother-in-law Liam immediately dropped what he was holding and rushed over to support his wife. "You're an adult now, yet you're still as clumsy as a child," he lectured, his face as serious as a professor's. "You and your cousin are truly worlds apart. A girl should be gentle and graceful." Chloe gently patted his hand and secretly rolled her eyes. Emily was annoyed but gritted her teeth and smiled. "Got it, brother-in-law." James, standing behind Emily, patted Liam on the shoulder and smiled. "Well, I happen to like Emily's energetic personality." Hearing them bicker, their grandfather finally burst out laughing. "All right, you kids, stop making a ruckus at the door and come inside to eat." Emily and Chloe looked at each other and smiled. He was tough on the outside but soft on the inside. Grandpa would always be Grandpa. The meal that day was incredibly joyful. Liam held his daughter with his left hand, while his right hand continuously picked up food for Chloe. "You love this dish. Eat more of it. Mother's cooking is still the best. The next time I get some time off, I have to learn a few of her recipes. It's rare for you to have such a good appetite." Emily stared at him, eyes wide, nearly spitting out her food. Was this the same Liam from her past life, who once declared that a true gentleman should stay far away from the kitchen? In the past, she and Liam had argued constantly over household chores, yet now, looking at Chloe, he was proactively doing everything. James also looked a bit displeased, his voice laced with jealousy. "Honey, I've already learned how to cook all your favorite dishes, so could you please stop looking at him like that?" Hearing this, Emily felt a little embarrassed and coughed lightly to brush it off. Truth be told, she had to admit that she was living a very good life lately. It seemed fate hadn't gotten it wrong this time. They had both met the right person. After dinner, seeing her brother-in-law still clinging to Chloe like glue, Emily couldn't take it anymore. She practically dragged him away to his room, finally getting some private time with her cousin. Emily held Chloe's hand and whispered, "Chloe, why don't you come with me to the island?" Chloe's eyes widened, not quite understanding. Emily quickly explained, "Look, everyone knows the local cooperative is about to be dissolved. There's a high chance Liam will lose his job. I just set up a factory on the island, and business is doing quite well. I need family to come help out." She leaned in closer, her eyes sparkling. "More importantly, in our past life, you were so miserably harmed by that Haley. Shouldn't you personally go there now to see how miserably she is living? Just to see if she got what she deserved?" Emily wasn't sure which of her words struck a chord, nor did she know how her cousin managed to persuade Liam. All in all, when it was time to head back to the island, Emily excitedly walked in front, holding Chloe's hand, leaving their two husbands to trudge behind them, carrying the luggage and the baby. They were in high spirits until they walked past Richard's house. Emily's emotions reached a peak as she witnessed a chaotic scene. Richard's 3 teenage sons were shoving a skinny woman back and forth. "My dad already said it. You're here to serve our family," one of them shouted. "You do whatever I tell you. Won't listen? We'll beat it into you." The person being beaten was no stranger. It was Haley. Now, she no longer had her former arrogant and haughty demeanor. She was so skinny it seemed a gust of wind could blow her away. Covered in bruises, her face was as blank and emotionless as a wooden doll. Someone couldn't help but gently advise, "But after all, you're one family now. How can you kids do such a thing?" Another military wife whispered, "Richard, look at this. Your kids are ruthlessly beating your wife, yet you just stand there smoking in silence. After all, she grew up in our own courtyard, and now she's reduced to this state." But Richard just stood to the side, his face ashen, silently puffing on his cigarette, completely unresponsive. Suddenly, one of the boys screamed, "She's a homewrecker who destroyed another person's family. Not forcing her to live in the cowshed is letting her off easy. I don't know what kind of parents could give birth to a creature like her. Her whole family is useless and despicable." It was unknown which word struck the final nerve, but Haley suddenly went mad. She sprang up, pinned the boy who had just spoken to the ground, and began punching him relentlessly. Her figure was indeed frail, but her face at that moment was twisted and as terrifying as a demon in human skin. Seeing his son getting beaten, Richard also lunged forward and slapped Haley without any mercy. The entire yard fell into complete chaos. People were fighting, others were trying to intervene, and screams echoed to the heavens like a riotous market. Rumor had it that after that incident, because the chaos had gotten too out of control, Richard was forced to be discharged from the military. He didn't even get a chance to transfer to another sector and was forced to take his kids back to his hometown to live with his former wife and farm. As for Haley, she took the opportunity to divorce him and leave the island. From then on, no one ever saw a trace of her in her hometown where she was born. No one knew where she went, how she lived, or whether she suffered or thrived. As for Emily and Chloe, they had no free time to care about that. The factory work was now so busy, their feet barely touched the ground. They had to juggle so many things. Where would they find the time to remember such trivial matters? For the past few days, Emily had been constantly working overtime, and the moment she got home, she would collapse and sleep like the dead. James finally couldn't take it anymore. His face dark and brooding all day long, Emily figured she would definitely have to think of a way to coax him. The end.
So satisfying! Emily proves that independence always wins over toxic manipulation. What was your favorite moment? Drop a comment and subscribe.